So I'm Anishinaabe and also Quebecois, French Canadian. This video is primarily going to be for, I've had a lot of Indigenous people follow me, and I just wanted to explain my family's history, because in the past couple years I've learned about the term pretendian, and sometimes when I talk about Indigenous culture, heritage, and especially when I talk on patriarchy and the history of men and women, I will get called a $5 Indian or a pretendian. So, dad, French Canadian. Québécois. Je parle français. J'ai étudié français à l'université for la première année. My French, I studied French for the first year of university. It's a little bit rough. I don't speak French often, but I did take French. I was in French immersion. I asked to take Ojibwe in JK or SK because I was in French immersion, and I saw the kids that I went to school with, which were from Couchiching, they were studying Ojibwe, but the school, because my family did not have status, would not allow me to learn Ojibwe. So we were in Fort Frances, Ontario, which is where Couchiching is. Then my family located back to Thunder Bay, Ontario, which is Fort William First Nations, which is where my grandmother is from. Her last name being Stone prior to being married. Now, Bill C-31 is the reason that we were able to get status, because my grandmother married a Scottish man, but she was Anishinaabe Fort William First Nations. I did not spend a ton of time on Fort William First Nations. I had a lot of friends in high school. I spent some time biking around with friends, but I did not grow up on reserve. My family largely moved throughout the world as white. French Canadian, to be specific. I went to Catholic school my whole life. I also took world religions into university. I was in first year of university, so French teaching, that's what I was in. It was French teaching specialization. And then in second year, I transferred back to Lakehead, which was in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Studied political science pre-law because I wanted to be a lawyer. I spent 2 years there, so 3 years out of the degree finished, and I had 4 elective credits left to graduation, and that's when my funds ran out. I don't mean funds through the band, because again, I was not status Indigenous. That did not happen until actually a couple years ago, because my grandma had to we had to go through the whole process of the family tree, our lineage. My grandma applied, she got hers, then my mom and my aunt and my 2 uncles had to apply, they got theirs, then my aunt's kids got hers. And then me, my sister, my brother has still not got his. Now, where I grew up, it was really weird because it was one of those things, like, obviously a lot of people look at me and see white person. And then there was odd times throughout my life where someone would pull me to the side, quite literally, like at events or at parties, and pull me to the side and ask me what my ethnicity was, because they clocked that I wasn't 100% white. But a lot of the times people thought that I was part Asian in some way. Now, my dad, being French Canadian, he has always suffered with an alcohol problem and has a proclivity for dating Indigenous women and putting his hands on them. So growing up, he dated probably like 2 or 3 different Indigenous women on top of my mom, and he had a history of doing shitty things and telling us about it. And one of the times, one of the women he was dating, were playing cards, and she started going into her experience at residential schools. Now, as far as I'm aware, my grandma was not in residential schools, but her dad was. And so that's what created a lot of the generational trauma of my grandmother dating my grandfather, who is not a great person and also extremely racist. And then my mom dating my dad, also not a great person, clearly. And then as he got older, his racist viewpoints became a lot more dominant in the conversations he would have, and that was made worse when he was working out west in the oil fields in Alberta. Now, I personally, so Fort Frances, so born in BC, Fort Frances until I was 10, then Thunder Bay for high school, 1 year in Toronto, then back to Thunder Bay for a couple years, then I moved to BC again, or like back to BC. Met my now ex-husband. We moved to Winnipeg, spent some time in Winnipeg. Then after Winnipeg, we moved to Alberta, where I spent time in Edmonton, and then back to BC. So I've been making content for about 5 years. This is my 5th account. My account number 1 got up to about 71,000 followers when it was banned. Literally no community guidelines. All of a sudden, I got a guideline violation dated January 1st, 1970. My account was banned. I've appealed it. I've done everything. They took it away. Made a second account, they took it away. Made a third account, they took it away. This is my 4th account. My Instagram is Life's a Joke Boop, where most of my content from here gets repurposed onto Instagram. But if you go to that Instagram account and anything ever happens to this account, that is where I would post the new account on TikTok. Predominantly, my following from my other account was built off of talking about domestic violence. I talked a lot about domestic violence. I try not to make it racially based. I try not to talk about that aspect of it, and I try to stick more to the men and women of it all, because it is very much something that is predominantly experienced by women, but not exclusively. So my content jumps around. What usually ends up happening is I touch on a subject, and then what happens is people start saying very ignorant, sometimes racist things, and then that is where I take those comments and I use it as a way to educate. I pull a lot of information from books because I find that books make things more reputable. People there's a level of authority with books that people respect. And in the past, when I make content where I get worked up, where I get more animated, that content does not perform as well, and it also puts me in not a great space emotionally. Now, I have had some people comment about going into politics. I have had some people DM me, actually, which is very kind of you to ever think or consider me in that capacity. However, I quite like educating this way. I'm a personal trainer. That's how I make my money, and I do that online. That's a separate whole other thing. But this is a passion project. This is what I enjoy talking about, and I enjoy educating people the best of my ability. And I feel like there is a bridge to be gapped between not only men and women, but also Indigenous people and white people and people of color and white people. And I do believe that there is a subcategory or category of a lot of white people who have not been given the tools because of the white privilege, because of the people that they surround themselves with. Not necessarily always by choice, but those people that they are in community with, a lot of the times you're able to bridge that gap for them, and that is done through knowledge. Racists and bigots are always the loudest in comment sections, and I try my best to block the worst of them. But let me know if you have any questions. I honestly was informed about pretendians and that being an issue from someone else, and it's been really hard in my family specifically because status was something that they did not have for a long time due to the racism that Indigenous experience and wanting to kind of hide from that. It's just a complicated relationship, and one of the ways that I'm trying to kind of mend that relationship and bridge the gap myself is by becoming more educated, and I feel like sharing that with other people is a way that I can benefit others as much as I'm benefiting myself. Very last thing, very last thought here. The reason, the 100%, the reason when I mention that I'm Indigenous and I don't directly mention that I'm French Canadian is because some people think that means I'm Métis, which I am not Métis. And I find that actually gets more confusing for people because I've had that happen a lot with people that I've met that say they're Métis, and I'm like, oh, my family's from Quebec and I'm also Indigenous, and they're like, oh, you're Métis. And it's like, no, I'm not Métis.